I'm Cecilia Kragakis, and I'm joined by Dr. Joseph Schwietermann, a professor in the School for Public Service, the Department of Public Policy, Transportation, Urban Planning, and is the author of numerous books and peer-reviewed articles on the development of cities, transportations, and more. Hello, Dr. Schwietermann. Thank you for joining us on BDC Live.
Happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. Can you start by explaining your work in a nutshell? What do you focus your research on?
Right. I'm a professor at DePaul. I've been here for a long time and really like the opportunity I get at DePaul. I'm in downtown Chicago, one of the world's great cities. I study city building, urban planning, transportation is sort of my big specialty, but I also look at our region and how it's connected together, how transportation and sustainable development and housing and efforts to make our city a great global center take shape. It's a fun place to have that specialty.
Yeah. So a lot of your work has been focused specifically on Chicago. What made you choose to focus on Chicago, and what makes Chicago unique and worthy of study?
Well, in transportation, there's no other city like it in the world. And we sometimes don't pat ourselves on the back enough for that, because we got it all. We have the only airport in the world with two mega hubs side by side at O'Hare, American and United, and then you throw in a second major airport. Amtrak's big hub here at Union Station. There's no parallel to us in the world in freight railroading with the freight trains that come through. And we have a world-class transit system. It's had its ups and downs, but you look at our commuter rail system, and some would argue, and I would agree, that's the best in the country in terms of being able to get people downtown. So it's a fun place to study this, because we do think big when it comes to transportation. And coming out of the pandemic, things are looking pretty good. I mean, we're nervous about rapid transit. People aren't coming downtown the way they were, but all the other sectors are really on fire right now. And Amtrak's getting big money from the Biden administration, bipartisan infrastructure bill. The airlines are approaching pre-pandemic levels. Just this week, we had a big announcement: new airline Frontier is coming to Midway. And so there's a lot happening in that sector. And my office right at Jackson and Wabash and State, right at that intersection there, is really at the hub of it all. So it's been fun to watch the city bounce back.
You also talked a little bit about the CTA and stuff. How does our CTA stack up against other cities' mass transportation systems?
Yeah, well, you look at our system, and it's really, New York subway is by far the largest. But when you take the CTA and you look at where things were, and this shows how long I've been at DePaul. I've been here since 91. So, but in the mid 90s, there was problems similar to what we have now, where there was real concerns about safety on the system. There were issues with, random violence and so forth, and perceptions really took a hit. And they bounced back. We had a heck of a run, really, from about 2000 to, I'd say, about 2015, where the system really rose. Ridership broke records every year. Things were looking great. And about 2015, some research we're doing shows a lot of factors came together to start transit use to plateau and then ebb. Gas prices came down. People started working from home, which was a factor even before the pandemic. And all these new options popped up, particularly bicycling and scooters. And nobody really saw this coming. And you credit the Emanuel administration for bringing Divvy and Mayor Lightfoot for expanding that, and now scooters. And that started to nip away at transit use a bit, which, in a sense was a good thing, because more people were avoiding the car. Just fewer were on trains. Then the pandemic hit, everybody's life's changing. So now we're asking what comes next. And overall, things look okay for the CTA. We think buses are going to fully bounce back. Rapid transit, may bounce back to 80, 90%. Metro, things are more iffy right now, because it caters heavily to white collar workers come to the office. And that's anybody's guess how that's going to play out. But the longer this pandemic drags out, the more people's habits change, probably for good.
How can we as individuals be better either riders of CTA transportation or Metra or any other type of transportation?
Yeah, well, I think one thing you find is that, when I travel, the first thing I do is say, okay, can I realistically do this on transit? And some trips you just can't. If I'm uh, on the south side where I spend a lot of time at because I'm a south sider, and I need to go, let's just say hypothetically, to um, Oak Park or something like that. The trip on transit might be 90 minutes, whereas in the car it might be 35, and it just can't make it work. But often, there's a creative way to make things work. And my strategy is often, if I need to use Uber or Lyft for one segment or taxi cab, and I can do transit for the rest, it really is a workable option. So a good example being, I'll come downtown. I may have a meeting in Lincoln Square. I can do that on the train. And then somehow I have to get, somewhere like up to Evanston. And that's hard to do from Lincoln Square because you got to double down to Belmont and come back up and lots of stops. And you may take an Uber to sort of complete the circuit, and the rest of the day can be on transit. And that's, I get a lot done when I stay on buses or trains. I bring my laptop, I got the cell phone, mobile phone, and it's like an extension of the office, especially now where there's often plenty of empty seats.
You also wrote Terminal Town, an illustrated guide to Chicago's airports, bus deports, train stations, and steamship landings. Do you have a favorite Chicago transit station?
Yeah, great story. Well, my history sort of shows how this book happened. I grew up in Western Ohio, a little town near Lima, and we would get on the train at Fort Wayne, Indiana, and come to Chicago. And it was the Pennsylvania Railroad, the Penn Central after that, and then Amtrak. And so coming to Chicago is where the action was. Let's get out of this little town and come to the city. And I remember my dad pointing up and said, that's going to be the world's tallest building. And that was the Sears Tower going up. And we're saying, wow, that's cool. And so ended up being an urban planning center, directing it here at DePaul, sort of as a dream in some ways, because as a kid, this is, where the interesting stuff was happening. And so I spent a few years in the airline industry before I came to DePaul. I was at United for a couple of years, just as a kid out of school. And now I study inner city buses too, like Greyhound and Megabus. And so I kind of got all the modes of travel covered, which is fun. Steamship landings was sort of a new thing for me. But I would say, if you look at the Ogilvy Station, Union Station combo there, we got two stations just a few blocks apart. And man, pre-pandemic, you go there rush hour, and they're just abuzz with activity. And they're really, it's a special place from a transportation standpoint. And that's why corporations now want to be on that side of the loop, because you got real good access to those commuter rail stations. Of course, the Blue Line can zip you out to O'Hare, and the highways are good out there too. So I think the West Loop, the station complex, needs some work probably to integrate those two stations, but it's a special place.
Okay. You also mentioned, the Sears Tower, and Chicago has a lot of history from the World's Fair and to the birth of the skyscraper. Chicago was a city at the forefront of urban development in the 20th century. So what do you see for Chicago's future?
Yeah. Or one of the books I wrote, which is really something that I think of a lot, is about a history of regional planning in Chicago called Beyond Burnham, Beyond Daniel Burnham. And, the 100 years since the Plan of Chicago was written in 1909. So the book came out in about 2010 at this, the 100-year anniversary of that. And I think, what's remarkable about our city is how, every city's got a different set of boosters. Atlanta, there's like a big chamber of commerce. New York is so big that there sort of is no civic community that sort of advocates just for the city. There's organizations, but the massiveness. But Chicago, there's a lot of people here that really love this city. And you sell that when Millennium Park went up the way, philanthropists dug into their pockets, fundraise, pass the hat, help raise the money for that. We're seeing it now with, the push now to try to try new things in our city to reduce crime, to improve again our museum complex. The people in this city really come together to try to make our city great. And it's tough to travel and people say, "Whoa, I hear about Chicago and all the crime." And when you're here a while, you really can see that we have a civic infrastructure that's just astounding. And the Chatty Institute tries to support that. We're not as big as the Metropolitan Planning Council or some of the other organizations, the Civic Committee, the Commercial Club with the resources, but we do augment that. And we work with them. We do reports that are heavily used by them. We're in close contact with a lot of aldermen who try to improve their wards, and some exciting things are happening now that often doesn't get the attention it deserves. So in Chicago, we get to know each other, and we try to support making our city as great as it can be. And I think post-pandemic, there's some exciting things coming.
Yeah, I think a lot of us take for granted the way that our streets and cities were designed, planned, and kind of taken care of because it's kind of out of our control. And how do decisions about public policy and urban planning impact our everyday lives? And how can the average person kind of be a part of those decisions?
Yeah, well, we have an interesting thing in our region where, the aldermen really do have a loud voice, and there's good sides and bad sides to that. Mostly good. Occasionally we get, some graph that puts us in the headlines, but mostly we're finding that the aldermen really do serve as sounding boards for their wards, working with community organizations, pushing the mayor, pushing the departments, and that's been a good thing. I wish all wards were maybe as transparent as we see those on the north and northwest side, where there's, I think some of the aldermen we stay in touch with are really listen to what the experts say, which is great. In our region, we have, a remarkable transit system that's managed fiscally by the regional transportation authorities. So MetroPace and CTA are all under the umbrella of that, and everybody pays a little sales tax for that. So when you buy a cup of coffee, 1% or so are going to go to our transit system. And we really think post-pandemic, there's going to be a push for MetroPace, CTA, private bus lines, the South Shore Line, which goes to South Bend, to make that integrated better. So there may be common ticketing, and there may be better transfer points. So if you want to live a life, maybe car-free or car light, it just becomes easier. So you don't have to be buying these different tickets to transfer from one system to another. And they're hearing from the public that they want to see some innovation post-pandemic. And I think, fortunately, with the new infrastructure bill, there's going to be some funding to make that happen.
We've talked a little bit about the pandemic, and I was just wondering, do you think there will be a lot of lasting impacts on urban planning moving forward?
Yeah, I think the lessons we're seeing right now are several. One, the economy's humming along, and that's been good. So Chicago's unemployment rate has actually come down quite a bit, and our state's bond rating has gotten better, all kind of things that you wouldn't have guessed a year and a half ago. And we're also seeing people are coming back to the city. And that's, we didn't necessarily know it was going to happen this quickly. Not only that, not only, younger millennials and so forth are tired of living at home, but immigrant groups are coming back. Chicago's population is growing. And that's a big deal. What we're not so sure about yet is how this office market shakeup is going to occur. And every day I'm walking around, a couple times a week, walking around the loop, sort of seeing what's happening. And just, it's been fun. The last 2-3 days, things have come to life a lot more. Just with the weather's gotten a little nicer, and then it gets bad again, of course, but classes are back in session at most universities face to face, and the loop's returning. But, I just talking to a reporter at Crane Chicago Business a few days ago, is the office going to bounce back to 80% of pre-pandemic? Or is this work from home going to keep it closer to 50 or 60? And that's, that's going to affect things a lot. That said, what we appear to be seeing is companies going to keep their office space, but just spread people out a little bit more. So I think overall, there's reasons for optimism, but things are going to be different.
Are there anything else you're optimistic about in the future of urban spaces?
We find there's an explosion of interest now in the city and in the suburbs to make streetscapes exciting, to program spaces. So the old days of just having a city park and saying that's where you go for recreation. We still have that, and of course that's critical. But more and more, there's efforts to sort of brand neighborhoods, to give them an image, to make the architecture consistent across the downtown of that neighborhood or suburb, to have activities on the weekends for kids, to have programmed events involving the pubs and the civic organizations, try to make people connect with their neighborhood in new ways. And a couple of alums of our university just created a new company called Altogether, which we're following because it's exciting. They're trying to do that in lots of suburbs, city neighborhoods, festivals, and things like that. And that's important because in this digital world, people don't just go out and meet their neighbor the way they used to. And it's just been a gradual thing where we have such the world at our fingertips. So we have to kind of put a carrot out there for people to go out and connect with people that just live nearby. And people are hungry for that post-pandemic because they've been locked up or online for so long that there's a yearning to be out there and to feel connected. And I've noticed that with our students at DePaul, classes are back face to face, and you got sort of that community building that's happening in a different way now that we're all back in the same room.
Okay, that's a really nice answer. Another really hot topic, I imagine, is the future effects of climate change. That's something I would imagine urban planners are working to mitigate today. So what efforts are cities making to increase sustainability and to combat climate change?
Yeah, that's a great topic. And we're at the Chadwick Institute, we're studying Amazon real carefully, because Amazon is not only an online shopping forum, but they're now in transportation, a big deal. So we do twice a year a brief on Amazon Air, which is the new player out there carrying all these packages around. So they're lining up next to FedEx and UPS and DHL with their own airline to carry their own packages. And we have students that help collect data. We look at all their planes and where they fly, and we map them and see what the equipment is and what the schedule looks like. So it's really great to have, the kind of philanthropic support that we can have students involved in this kind of thing, because it's a real learning exercise for them, and we get a lot of attention for it. But one thing we see is that Amazon is really drunk the Kool-Aid, so to speak, at least in theory, to become a much more sustainable company. And they have to, because the world's watching them with a microscope. They got a lot of power, but they have a lot of political pressure they're facing too to become a better citizen. And so one thing we did a report that's going to be released soon about what Amazon has committed to on the climate change front. And it's we'll see the proofs in the pudding, what they actually implement. But things like sustainable aviation fuel that's made with biofuel, they're pioneering that and trying to move up the learning curve, putting funding in battery powered airplanes. That's a real exciting thing. You won't see giant battery planes probably in my lifetime, but you may see smaller mid-sized planes, and Amazon is on the ground floor of that. And in trying to use biodegradable packaging. And my pet peeve is when you order something and you order a little jump drive and it comes in this big package filled with air, bubble wrap and everything else. You say, this just isn't right. All I need is a envelope with a jump drive in it. So they're developing a new system, which is exciting. And we're seeing how big a deal this could be. It's like if you order a 10-pack of Pampers, they don't need to put that in a box. It's already in a box. Just put a label on the box and let the delivery man give it to you and eliminate all that greenhouse gas creating, paper and plastic. And people don't mind if there's a slight dent or two in a Pampers box because it's just meant to be opened and used without any fragile material inside. So it's kind of a funny example. But we think with all these efforts, if technology advances, greenhouse gas emissions from package delivery, could drop by, 50 to 70% without some massive technical breakthrough, just with smarter ways to move goods about.
Okay, very good answer. Lastly, I just have a couple questions with your experience at DePaul. What's your favorite class to teach?
Yeah, well, that's a hard question because I wear two hats. I'm director of the Chaddick Institute for Mental Development. I'm a professor and I teach in different programs. And I'm especially proud that we created a graduate degree with a couple of faculty members, Ewan Haig and Howard Rosing, called Sustainable Urban Development. And we have a really strong cohort of students that really like that topic. And we say this is really an urban degree. It's not a degree in sort of corporate sustainability, it's about how neighborhoods can become sustainable. So teaching those students how to do good site plans and to look at how developments can become more green with integrating bike sharing and green roofs and permeable pavements. And that really is a fun class because you can actually measure how much, greenhouse gas reduction you can achieve with some smart development. But I would say working one-on-one with students and thesis and capstone projects, is probably the biggest high for me because I learned from them, they learned from me, hopefully, and every student picks a different topic, so it's just this panorama of learning that we have in the classroom, which is pretty neat in the School of Public Service.
Okay. Lastly, what does your commute look like to go to work?
Yeah. I live down in Holman, Flossmoor. We're kind of a south suburb of Chicago. So I walk a few blocks, 2 blocks to the Metro Electric every day. And I think I've counted, I joke the Metro people that I think if you'd count, I'm over 20,000 trips in my life. It's my mobile office. I get on, I plug in my computer, I work. When I get downtown to Van Buren, it's just a block walk to the Loop campus. So I walk over to campus and, spend the day there and go up to Lincoln Park quite a bit because the school I'm in is actually, reports to the dean of the College of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences. So I'm on the red line a lot, but I am psychologically connected to the South Side. So go White Sox, I guess, comes next when I say that.
I will respectfully disagree. I'm a Cubs fan.
Our house is officially fans of both. So I say that in jest, but it's fun to see, I think, some exciting things on the South Side that are happening right now. And, some controversial like the Obama Library, other things are just great to see, like some of the action in Bronzeville, where our new stadium is part of something that's leading to I think a nice dynamic in the city. There's some tensions there and some problems, but overall, it's neat that DePaul is represented both north and south with our Lincoln Park campus and our Wintrust Center Stadium bit on the south side.
Yes, that's all the questions I have. So thank you for joining me today, Dr. Schwietermann. Where can viewers learn more about you and your work?
Yes, just type in the word Chaddick Institute, CHADDICK Institute. We have, a lot of interesting stuff on there. We got recent highlights or upcoming events. My contact is all in there, and section of some of our recent media coverage, which is something that I sort of see as a service of my job at Chaddock, is to help reporters understand issues, and it helps gets DePaul's name out as well, which is a good thing.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.